asset-limited, income-constrained, employed.
Meet Alice is to introduce JEA leadership to the 40% of our community that live paycheck to paycheck.
For 1 hour, some 50 JEA employees lived as if they were the working poor.
I want to get the experience. I feel like the best thing that we can do as leaders is to put ourselves in others' shoes, to try to understand their plight, and then that'll give us an opportunity to figure out ways in which we can help.
Each JEA employee was assigned a family group and received a role in that family.
I am 36 years old and I am unemployed at home. My husband works, my daughter's in school.
I'm an 8-year-old with a family of 5. One of my sisters is pregnant and she's 16 years old.
Some employees visited social services. Many had transportation issues. Some got evicted. Some were so in need of money, they broke the law and were arrested.
So I was sitting at the house because I'm Xavier, 52 years old, and then someone from the neighborhood came and handed me some cash and said, here's a transportation pass, here's some sugar packets, and then 5 minutes later the police were at my house. So now I'm currently sitting in jail.
JEA employees called the simulation overwhelming, but a great lesson in empathy.
A simulation like this kind of brings it home. It makes it feel real when you're having to get a payday loan or when the bank won't cash your check because you don't have an account.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. This time, please join me in a time of reflection. Thank you. And I'd ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And let's go to a values moment. David Goldberg, please.
Good morning, General DeSalvo, Vicki, and JEA board members. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is David Goldberg, and I've had the privilege of working at JEA for more than 7 years. I serve as the Director of Brand and Content Strategy under the leadership of Dr. Charles Moreland. I am fortunate to work with a team of very talented and creative individuals who focus on educating our customers about our programs and services to help them save and conserve, as well as building strong brand relationships. Our team also leads JEA's volunteer and ambassador initiatives, as well as project and neighborhood outreach to ensure we are connecting our customers with the proper resources and education as we continuously strive to be a highly valued community partner. I'll begin right now with our safety briefing. For those of us participating downtown, in the event of an emergency, our JEA security will contact 911 and coordinate any required evacuation. If the emergency requires an evacuation, safely exit through one of the 2 marked exits. In this meeting area, you can either exit through the Pearl Street main entrance or the Monroe Street exit to the left of the American flag. We will assemble in front of the Duval County Courthouse located at the northwest corner of Adams and Clay Street. If anyone needs medical assistance or help with safely evacuating, please notify your nearby JEA security officer. Please always be cognizant of the potential trip hazards in and around your respective areas. And lastly, please keep your cell phones on silent and laptops on mute. My values moment today is centered around our core value of respect. To convey this sentiment, I would like to share a brief story. A father and his young son boarded a train. The boy, about 8 years old, sat by the window, his excitement almost contagious as he pointed at everything outside. "Look, Dad, the trees are moving," he exclaimed. A moment later, "Wow, the clouds are racing us. The sky is so blue." He kept looking around and taking everything in that was around him in a dramatic manner. The other passengers began to notice. Some exchanged amused glances, while others whispered, clearly thinking that this boy was acting strange, perhaps something wrong with him. His enthusiasm felt unusual for a child his age. Finally, a fellow passenger, unable to hold back, asked the father, "Why is your son acting like this?" The father paused for a moment, looking at his son, who was now pressing his face against the window, grinning ear to ear. Then he turned back and calmly replied, "My son just regained his eyesight after being blind for almost his entire life." In that moment, the atmosphere in the train shifted. What had seemed like disruptive behavior became a source of awe. The boy wasn't acting strangely at all. He was seeing the world for the very first time. This story reminds us that respect and empathy often require us to see beyond the surface. We often make snap judgments based on limited information, but when we pause to understand someone's story or situation, it changes everything. As we begin today's meeting, I encourage us to embrace this mindset. Behind every idea, every challenge, and every conversation is a perspective we may not fully understand. Let's lead with empathy and offer respect, not just because it's right, but because it allows us to truly see the beauty in others. Thank you again for the opportunity to share the story with you today.
Great message, David. Thank you. Okay, this time I'd like to ask if we have any comments from the public. Public comments related to the rate hearing will be heard a little later in today's meeting. And so first, I have John Nooney. And again, folks are reminded 3-minute time limit.
Hello, I am John J. Nooney, 2023-0819, active JSO trespass citation, 2024-0571-349. That's Jacksonville University. Missed the ribbon cutting ceremony on that one, 2024-0107. What I want to do, I do have some handouts, for you, which could be part of the permanent record. You don't mind? No, you can't? All right. All right. Yeah. Well, anyway, what I want to just share with you, last night I attended our CPAC meeting, and here's the meeting notice. And on it is, first was a presentation by Noah Ray, and he's the Emergency Preparedness Supervisor and Adrian Chambers, Emergency Preparedness Planner. This is FEMA stuff, and I'm next to a FEMA house. And what I want to, the reason I'm here is public access to our waterways. We're getting absolutely crushed in this community. And JEA can be an unbelievable partner. Now, as far as the rate hikes, double them, triple them, quadruple them, because as soon as you do that, then you'll have money, for the tree hugger gang. I saw, Logan Cross, Lisa Reineman, Ann Cogley. I mean, then all of a sudden, now we'll have a real shift that, we care about stuff. And, another thing what I want to do, again, is public access. 4 months ago, let's see, I'm down to a minute, but this is the Reader's Digest version. And, I went to the Northeast Florida Regional Council, and that's 7 counties, and that was in 23, so 2 years ago. In January, I went to them again with an update. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is FIND, that's our Florida Inland Navigation District. It's our ad valorem property tax money. And Daryl Joseph, Jill Enns, Brian Burkett, our Parks Department, they are awesome. And they went to waterways and recognized the value of our 2.5 acres next to the FEMA house. Noah Ray, that's the first time I met that guy last night. And so the point is, we got put on the list. So our place is now worldwide marketable to the world. You can't script it any better. So JEA, building community, the River Accord, like I said, double the rates, triple them, quadruple them, because I participated in that River Accord. And one of the biggest components of the River Accord was public access and water quality. 2024-0325, that's the University of Florida study to study septic tanks. We have 2 of them. You knock it out immediately, improve water quality. Again, another component of the River Accord is public access.
Got to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You've been great. Just so you know, I'm wearing my James Gaddis shirt.
Okay. Thanks, John. Okay, next, Logan Cross. Okay, and then a Miss Teresa Parlato, and I hope I said your last name correctly.
I was the last one in the room. I was kind of thinking I might be one of the last ones so I could hear some other stuff.
You're welcome to speak now if you want, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm not happy about the pay raise and I'm not happy about our rate changes. I'm not sure this is the time to speak about that.
Not rate changes. We'll do that in a second,
Okay.
later on.
Not rate changes, but the pay raise.
Well, go ahead.
I'm not happy about the pay raise. I don't know you. I don't know your background, but I just feel like that's an awful big pay raise to get for not even being in the job yet and showing us. I feel like if you come into a job and you show that you can save money, make things more efficient, make it so that I don't have to have JEA outside of my house for 4 months just trying to change my water lines, then maybe you might deserve a pay raise, but that's not what's happening here at JEA. I don't know if you've had anything to do with that in the past, but literally I have JEA outside my house for 4 months trying to fix my water main. So, if you can't get that right, I don't know that you deserve a pay raise. And I'm not saying that you asked for one. What I read in the article that I read said that JEA said, that your board said, we're doing really good right now, so we can afford to give her a pay raise. Well, that doesn't do anything for us. We're not doing really good right now. We're not doing really good, and we can't, we feel like if you are doing really good at JEA, maybe you need to reward your customers who can serve and do things that you ask us to do when you're not doing really good. Because we can't afford to do this anymore. I know I can't. I got a $12 increase in my Social Security this year, and y'all are sucking it all up. And that doesn't even include the $10 that you're charging me for picking up my trash extra this year. So now I'm like $8 in the hole. That's not fair to us. And I don't know you, maybe you need this money, maybe you don't need this money, but for JEA to say something like, we're doing really good, so we're going to give her a pay raise, doesn't sound fair. Give us a pay raise. Give us a pay raise.
Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to City Council Liaison, Councilmember Michael Boland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to offer at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, now to the Managing Director, CEO comments. Vicki, please.
Thank you, sir. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of big projects that are going on right now. We are currently replacing 860 feet of a 24-inch water main down San Jose Boulevard. Pictured on the slide is the project outreach team, our project management team, and Coxwell Contracting, who is doing the work. Now, this is between Old River Road and Clare Lane. It's a 24-inch water main. And if you recall, we had a leak there last summer with the big pit hole that we had to dig. And we found another leak and decided that we needed to replace this to ensure no service disruptions. While this is going on, we have been communicating with our community outreach and sending flyers, to all of our residents out there. So we sent 45,000 flyers, and our teams are on the ground talking to the businesses and all the stakeholders out there.
Mr. Chair, if I might interject as the representative of the Mandarin area in San Jose Boulevard, thank you very much for the attention and the communication.
Thank you. And you may have noticed we're trying to not disrupt traffic and only closing lanes at night. Thank you. The next one, we brought online in February the first water reclamation center built in Duval County in 48 years. This is the culmination of 3 years of construction on an 80-acre site near E-Town. It is a $148 million investment in the community, and it will provide, on February 3rd, it started providing 1.1 million gallons a day of reclaimed water to E-Town and the Southside area. It will eventually be providing 4 million gallons per day, and that serves approximately 22,800 of our customers. So that's an example of our expansion efforts and also our technology efforts to make sure that we are providing good reclaimed water and not sacrificing our aquifer for things like irrigation. Last but not least, we had our annual Black History Month breakfast this month, and our own Dr. Charles Moreland spoke. Charles spoke about his history here in Jacksonville and the history of a lot of African Americans here in our town, which was really extraordinary. So I wanted to thank the committee that put that together and thank Dr. Moreland for his wonderful keynote speech. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, we'll go to the JEA performance update, and Julie Crawford with the corporate scoreboard.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to present the results of the corporate scorecard with data as of January 31st. There are no updates to the employee engagement score, and our safety metric is well below target. And there are also no updates for the customer satisfaction metrics, but the residential bill continues to be the lowest combined electric, water, and sewer bill in the Florida benchmark, and also ranks the lowest as a % of median household income. Total spend is under budget by 5% year to date. O&M is under by 4%, and fuel and purchase power expense is over budget by 30%, driven by two main factors: colder than expected weather and the continued Northside 3 outage. And Ted is going to follow up a little bit more on the financial impact of that in his presentation. Our CapEx spend is under budget by 22%, and that's mainly due to shifting cash flows and construction and invoicing delays. Then moving over to the right to our operational metrics, the SAIDI metric is over target by 17%, and that's mainly due to the May weather event that we've mentioned in previous meetings. Our clean energy is underperforming target by a couple percentage points, but we do anticipate it will achieve 16% over the course of the year. Our water reliability improved month over month and returned to below the targeted maximum after popping up over the threshold due to the Nocatine main break event. And our sewer reliability performance declined and is over the year-to-date target maximum due to 9 events occurring in January. Our technology availability reports 1 essential system outage year-to-date. And that concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Just the sewer overflows, what was the cause of those?
Great question. I believe I can give you minimal information, and then if we need to get into details, I'll have to defer to the experts. 9 of them happened in January. 2 were from a third party. 6 were to the waters of the state, and 1 did not reach waters of the state, and that's the extent of the details that I have right now. But I'm happy to get you more information if you would like.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Julie. And Ted, for the financial update, please.
Good morning. Thank you. So here's our electric system revenue and expenditure review for the year through January. I guess you could call the theme of the electric for this period is we had a very cold January. So we're going to keep coming back to that point several times. So as you can see, our base revenues are up a little bit more than 5.5%. So there again, that was driven by the colder than normal temperatures in January, and sales were up. Other revenues are up as well, almost 20 million. 17 million of that is driven by the fuel and purchase power. So there again, that was, as Julie mentioned a moment ago, mainly by the colder temperatures than normal, but also by Northside number 3 being down and us having to purchase power to supplement there. And then we also, on other revenues, our investment income is about $1 million higher than we had anticipated. So that's a good job from the Treasury team. If you look down on the expenditure side of the equation, you can see O&M is slightly below budget at about 6.6%. We are following those trends. We think some of those will level out, but we hope to still stay slightly below on the O&M. On the fuel and purchase power, this is the flip side of that coin. So revenues are up, but also expenditures are up. On our debt, we are slightly below what we have projected on debt, and that is that we have not needed to borrow for some of the capital on debt, but we do anticipate there being some borrowing from the credit facility. So that I think that number will level back out to projection as we move along. Our capital funding is right where we thought it would be. We do see our city contribution running lower, and that was the budget was anticipated with the new agreement. So, but the payments have not followed that. But after we get the new agreement in place, those numbers will come back to where we anticipated. Our non-fuel purchase power was slightly over. There was about a $1.3 million expenditure with the Energy Authority that we had not budgeted for. We will use part of that O&M surplus to rectify that. And then our other expenditures are slightly, well, so the other expenditures, the main driver here is the reserve fund, and we have not had to put as much money from the reserve fund into the budget because of the higher sales. Moving along, so this slide compares our purchase power per megawatt this year compared to last year. So you'll see the purchase power has gone up significantly. There again, that was driven by the colder temperatures in January and the higher demand for power throughout the state of Florida. Actually throughout the whole eastern part of the country. And then our generated power was also higher due to higher fuel cost. For our O&M, so budget to actual, so right now we've spent just a little over $100 million of the $315 million budget. Our projection right now is that we will be at $314 million. So basically the forecast is right on budget. On the capital side, you see that our forecast is slightly over the budget, or excuse me, slightly under the budget, where the budget is $307 million, and our budget is $307 million. Our forecast is $300 million. And then at the bottom, you can see where our cash stands. Moving on to the water system. So our revenues from water and sewer sales is slightly below budget of 1.8%. As you know, the first part of the year is not our large months on water sales. During the fall and winter, we anticipate our revenues to get back to what we have forecasted. Capacity and extension fees continue to outperform what our budget was, which is a good indication of the growth of our system. Investment income is up on the water side as well as on the electric side. And then our other income is slightly below what we have budgeted. That is based mainly with rentals, where the water department owns some of JEA's facilities, and the electric department pays rent on that. One of those facilities has depreciated out, so there's no longer a charge there. So on the O&M side, you see we're very close on the O&M for water, about 1.6% below budgeted, which is kind of where I'd like to see us around that 2%. On our capital, we have about $4.5 million. This corresponds back up to the capacity fees. So those capacity fees get passed back into the funding for our capital. Our debt service is lower than what we anticipated, and some of this is around the timing of the new debt that we issued back in January. We think that this will levelize itself out over the year. City contribution, the same as on electric. As we get the new agreement in place, there'll be a catch-up payment there. And then our other expenditures are slightly under. That's driven by a slight increase of about $160,000 in our uncollectibles. On our water system, here again, the budget is $264 million. Our projection's $266 million. So we'll be working to keep that within our budget over the year. And then on the capital side, our budget is $567 million, and right now our projection's $515 million. So a little bit behind on the capital side. You can see at the bottom our cash and investments on the water side. You see the large tick up in January, and that was due to the bond sale and closing in January. So then we'll move on to our financial metrics. So everything is in green except our fixed charge coverage. So our target on that is 1.6 times. We're only at 1.08. Our forecasting models tell us that during the summer, we will catch up, and so we should be very close to that 1.6 or exceed it. So as the summer goes along, we'll be monitoring these numbers.
Ted, is the difference between fixed charge coverage and debt service coverage Vogel?
So that's one of the main drivers. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. It shows how
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Vogel is impacting.
Vogel's figured in one of them and not in the other. Yes.
So that brings up an interesting point, Ted. So our target of 1.6, is that going to, how feasible is that? Or the Vogel impact, does that make it, I know it makes it challenging, but is that target still feasible, do you think?
So I think it is, but I think we're always going to be very close to that number. I don't think we're going to see that number in the 2 range, right? Because of the additional revenues that will be required to bring it up to that number. So, our numbers are at, and our projections are right at that 1%. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room there, but I think we would be very close unless something happened that was not anticipated on, sales. We had an extremely mild summer or something along those lines. But having the strong winter is putting us in a good spot as we go into the summer.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to recess the regular board meeting and call to order our rate hearing discussion. And first we'll go with comments from the public. And again, I'll recall Ms. Teresa Parlato, please.
I'm Teresa Parlato, and I live at 1165 Ingleside Avenue. I'm sure you'll recognize that address. I really thought that I would be able to listen to some of my fellow citizens here before I got to talk again. I'm not in favor of a rate hike. I don't think that we need a rate hike, especially if if the JEA is doing as well as they said they were doing in the article. And I would rather see the money go back to the citizens rather than to be pay raises for all the CEOs and the high-ranking officials here at JEA. I just would. I mean, you guys probably make enough money to live, without worrying about it, but a lot of us don't. A lot of us don't. And I just was looking at another article, and it said basically that the average rate is going to go up by, I believe it was $18, which is about what I got from my Social Security. And we just can't do it. You guys need to stop. If we're doing so good, lower our rates. I never see you lower our rates. Lower our rates. We just can't keep doing it. My property taxes have soared. My insurance has soared. What else you want? You want my firstborn? Because she's like 50. I'll give her to you. This needs to stop. You're going to put people out of their homes because they can't afford electricity. You know what? If we're doing that good, that we can afford $125,000 or $50,000, whatever it is, pay raise, why aren't we having a bank, some kind of system set up for senior citizens that cannot afford their electricity? I know we got the $1 thing you can donate. You know how many times I've tried to get help with my JEA, and there's no, as soon as you open it up, the amount of money that's in there goes like within 30 minutes. It's not for seniors, it's for everybody that needs help. And it's a kind of like, aid or something. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it goes within 30 minutes of being available. There's people out there that are not able to afford the electricity bill as it is right now. And if you keep going, I'm one of them. And, I don't know if anybody else wants to talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next, Kelly Frazier, please.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Frazier, president of the Northside Coalition of Jacksonville, where we show up and speak out against forms of social, racial, and economic injustices. 2 years ago, my late father, Benjamin Frazier, came before you, asking you to listen to the voice of the people and keep in the forefront of your minds the low-income residents in our community as you consider your rate increases. I am here to echo his call. JEA itself, citing the United Way of Northeast Florida, says that nearly 40% of the utilities customers struggle to meet. Yet the basic monthly charge, which impacts low-income residents, is increasing to $17 a month, and the base energy rate is also going up. We ask that you not increase the basic monthly charge and not increase, even reduce the base energy rate. These proposed increases hurt even more because the fuel charge rate has gone up from 3 cents to 5 cents. Mr. Frazier encouraged you to have the higher energy rates for those who use more electricity. We appreciate that you plan to follow his advice by proposing the higher Tier 2 rates for electricity for use above 1,000 kilowatts a month. This should help and promote efficient use of electricity, which impacts higher earners who are typically higher users. While some low-income households use a lot of energy, low-income residents consume less electricity than other residential customers on average. And you could increase this Tier 2 rate so that you can reduce the base energy rate and not increase the basic monthly charge. Moreover, the proposed pay increase for the CEO to a staggering $700,000 is a slap in the face of every resident in Jacksonville who is struggling to pay their bills. If the CEO's salary is below market rates, that's fine with us. The CEO can join the rest of us, who I'm sure you also can agree are not being paid what we're worth. Increasing the CEO's pay to this level shows us that you're out of touch with the realities faced by everyday people. We demand that you, the JEA board, reconsider these rate increases and the CEO's pay raise. We call on you to put the needs of the community first and to find more equitable solutions for JEA's financial challenges. In closing, my father, Ben Frazier, again offered to partner with you to raise awareness with your constituents, particularly in the low-income areas of Northwest Jacksonville, about energy efficiency programs to help those struggling to pay for electricity bills. Sadly, you did not take us up on this offer, but again, I am here to work with you. I would love to be a part of the constructive solutions for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll talk the electric, water, and sewer rate review. Ted Phillips and Victor Blackshear, please.
Good morning again. So last week at our Finance, Governance, and Audit Committee meeting, Mr. Baker had requested a few of the main drivers for these rate increases. And so I think that information was provided to you, but I wanted to give a brief summary of those before we jump into Victor's presentation. So the main driver on the electric system are our payments for Plant Vogtle. So we have spoken numerous times about those debt service payments, but just to give another quick synopsis of those payments. In 2025 was the first year that both plants number 3 and 4 Vogtle were in service for a full year, and the debt service payment is about $170 million. The debt service will remain in this $170 million range for the next several years. For comparison, the electric system's total O&M budget for FY25 remained flat from the FY24 budget at $315 million. And we are estimating that the FY26 O&M budget will increase by 3% to $324 million. Should also be noted that the increases from Vogtle put additional pressure to maintain the fixed charge coverage ratio we spoke about a moment ago. In essence, for every dollar we must pay for Vogtle to maintain that 1.6 ratio, we need to collect $1.6 of additional revenue. On the water system side, the main driver is the rate increases due to the large increases in capital spending due to the growth of the system. So at the Capital Projects Committee meeting held just before this meeting, we spoke about some of those large water projects that are currently in flight and becoming, and the new Greenland water reclamation facility that came online. Also, the water O&M budget has also increased 4% in FY25 over the FY24 budget. And we are estimating the FY26 O&M budget to increase $25 million or 10% over the 25 budget. These increases are necessary to support this new infrastructure that we've put into place. Be happy to try to answer any questions any board member would have about drivers on the rate increases before we jump into that. All right, then I'll turn it over to Victor to give a quick review of the proposed increases.
Thank you, Ted. Good morning, Chair and board members. As Ted mentioned briefly, I'll go back over the slides that we've reviewed. Testing. Hey, here we go. Okay, so well, thank you. Let's just get started. Just to recap again, when we take a look at these, our rate strategies, the goal is to simply recover our costs, and many of the costs Ted have already reviewed in his opening statements. So let's begin with the electric system recommendations. Again, when we took a look at our cost of service study back in October, the results showed us that we were going to be $35.7 million under recovering our revenue requirements. So our recommendation is to raise our rate revenues by 6% in the electric system April 1st for $25.2 million. And that 6% is in revenues. The impact to the individual customer bills will vary depending upon their load profiles and their usage patterns, which we have examples at the end of this presentation to show some of the impacts to a residential bill. For FY26, again, when we stood up our projected revenues compared to our projected revenue requirements, we saw another $39.7 million under recovery there. So our recommendation to the board is to raise those base revenues by 4.5% as well, at $39.7 million. On the water sewer system side, we also did our cost of service study look. It's a little different a mix. On the total system sales, you see we do have a $15 million under recovery projections for FY25, but when we peeled apart the water and sewer systems, we were under recovering really on the water side, which gave us a temporal opportunity on the sewer side to actually adjust some of our rate structures to allow a decrease to some of the components in the sewer structures for certain sets of our customers. But overall, our recommendation for the system as a whole combined is 6% or $15 million increase in FY25. And for our rate adjustments for FY26, our recommendations is to close the $22.8 million gap with a 4.2% revenue rate adjustment as well. So with those rate revenue adjustment recommendations, there's a series, more than a series, but there are several rate adjustments or rate configurations that have to take place in our billing system. Our director of CRM systems, Jesus Garcia, is overseeing over 550 changes in our billing system to ensure that our customers are being billed appropriately. And our director of customer revenues, Chris Jackson, he's overseeing for the past several months testing to ensure that the billing accuracy with these rate changes comes through to our customers as well. So even though these are a handful of bullets, there's a major undertaking in implementing these changes for JEA. But when you bring it all together, with the work, the dedication of JEA employees, we're still providing a really great value to our customers. For the price of a $5 latte, you can do any one of these 4 services you see here or others, from 37 hours of cooking to almost 1,500 hours of watching television, which is a great value for our residential energy costs. And the water, this is a similar story. For the cost of about a $2 bottle of water, you can do one of any of these four activities as well as a customer, and receive that great value of $2. 25 baths, 47 showers, 25 loads of laundry, or 625 flushes, which are all essential for our community. But then when you put it together, as far as the residential bill, as Julie mentioned earlier in her readouts, our benchmark, when you combine our bills, you can see here, even back in October 2024, we're at the bottom of our benchmarks. Even when you apply these rate revenue recommendations to our residential bills, it takes it from 205 to 210 in 2025 to 221, FY26. And even comparison to the October benchmarks of last year, we're still in the lower tier. As Julie mentioned earlier, if you look at our benchmarks today, it will continue to place us at the bottom or near the bottom, even with both rate revenue recommendations together.
So here's our timeline. So we are here today at the February. We just had our rate hearing. We will come back to the board at their meeting next month, and there'll be board action on that recommendation. Our plan is to put the new rate structures and rates for April 1, and then we will have the second increase in October that will bring us through FY26, and will get us back on that pattern of an October review of our rates with our budgets. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them at this point.
When was the last rate increase?
So on the water side, the last rate increase was in 2012.
Correct.
So been 13 years. On the electric side, we did do a rate increase last April.
Thank you.
And I know this is, so crystal balling it, after this current rate increases proposal, do we have any idea how it will level off, or do we have any idea when we'd be entertaining the next scenario where we might have to do another rate increase? And I'm not suggesting 13 years, like this thing, but
yes, sir.
Have any idea?
So as we spoke a little bit on the drivers, to maintain that 1.6 coverage ratio, and with the additional $170 million of debt service payment to Vogel, at 1.6 times, that's about $270 million. And so these rate increases are going to bring in about $90 million of that. And so we're supplementing that with our reserve fund, rate stabilization reserve fund. And so I would anticipate that we would be coming back to the board on the electric side with additional rate increases for the next at least 3 years. We'll be working to keep those as modest as possible. On the water and sewer side, as I think we will see continued pressure on the rates there as well, with the new requirements for Senate Bill 64 and some of the capital projects that go along with that. I know Rob and his team are working very hard to figure out different ways to succeed at that and at lower cost. And so that will help take some of that rate pressure off, but we don't have enough information to really So right now I'm having to plan for the worst scenario and hope for the best. With that, I think we would still see rate increases on the water and sewer side for the next planning horizon of 3 years of about 6% each year.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Please.
Victor, I just want to thank you and Ted, your team. You did a great job putting this together. And I think the illustrations of a $2 bottle of water equals JEA continues to be a great value. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and this is just more of a comment. And, you know, I think anytime we talk about increases, right, you know, depending on where you are in the economic spectrum, it presents some unique challenges. But I also think there's an opportunity here. And so one thing that I know you all are already working on is more outreach and more education, especially as we think about some of the underserved communities. How do we empower them to have more control over reducing their burden economically, right? Either through LED lighting replacements and things that are going to lower the overall cost in an environment where, you know, we have to figure out ways to offset the investments that are required in order for us to provide reliable, rateable energy. So to the extent that we have plans in place and we can share those plans with the broader community, I think there's an opportunity for us to do that.
I agree, board members. Excuse me, Chair. I definitely want to mention we already have in place, and we're looking for more opportunities to put programs in place. But we have several programs already to assist our customers with free energy efficiency assessment tests. We have energy efficiency rebates that we have placed out there, as you stated, with LEDs. We have free water conservation kits. We will come out and do an energy audit as well. So we also are mindful, and we're doing the best jobs that we can to assist the underprivileged as well in our communities. And we're looking for more opportunities, as you spoke. Thank you.
Earl, put on my Marty Lanahan hat for a second and so forth, because Marty was obviously a champion of our weatherization programs and helping some of our customers who are having issues paying the bills and so forth. How is that process coming? I know there was a big initiative, and you know, I know the energy audits and so forth, and you know, our customers absolutely need to take advantage of it, but also we need to get the word out of those programs at the same time.
I believe you're speaking of the East Side, the R3 program. That is going very well. I think we will need to increase our outreach and start educating customers a lot more on the energy side. And on the water side, Victor, I don't believe that we mentioned that some of our customers are going to be seeing a decrease in their water bills.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
If you'd speak to that.
Absolutely. If you recall back in one of the previous slides, we were over collecting temporarily, but we were over collecting on the sewer side. So we have some of our recommendations in the tariffs. You'll see what we're actually lowering some of those rate components of the base monthly charge and tier charging for those customers. But again, it depends on your load usage profiles. If you're a low use customer, you will see a savings there. For that first recommendations in April 1. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities there. And also, if you recall back in the board workshop, we also made some recommendations to adjust our multifamily customers. When we did a survey of what was taking place with their low usage behavior, we discovered that they are 5/8 and 3/4 inch meters. Their profiles mirrored a lot like residential customers. So we made, in our recommendations was to adjust those as well, which is actually a significant decrease for those customers, and which we found mainly consist of duplexes in the inner core of our community. So thank you, Vicki.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so again, I'd like to remind, this item will be brought to the board for consideration at the March 25th, 2025 meeting. Seeing that there are no other business with the rate hearing is adjourned and the regular JEA Board of Direction meeting is reconvened and called to order. So next item is, if I could ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, please. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, next item, I'd like to report out on the executive committee report. In accordance with Article 21 JEA Charter and the JEA Board bylaws, the executive committee, consisting of myself, Rick Morales, Kwanzaa Humphrey, and John Baker, met on February 18th to review the slate of officers for this board. Board member M.G. Ornder was also present. The committee came to the consensus to nominate the following slate of officers. For secretary, M.G. Ornder. For board vice chair, Rick Morales. And for chair, myself, Joe DeSalvo. At this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve this.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion, please? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. This new slate of officers will take effect on April 1st. And also, I want to thank Rick Morales and M.G. Ornder for your services, upcoming services, and continued service as board officers, and also thank Kwanzaa Humphrey for her service as the outgoing secretary, too. So thank you all. Okay, next item will be the JEA Compensation Committee. The Compensation Committee, consisting of myself, Rick Morales, and Kwanzaa Humphrey, met on February 18th. The committee was joined by fellow board members John Baker and M.G. Ornder. Diane Mosier, Chief Human Resource Officer, provided the committee with a review of statistics and data from the American Public Power Association, the Large Public Power Council, Towers Watson, and CompData. Board members held discussions regarding the current salary, cost of living in service territory, previous CEO pay, interim CEO pay versus proposed base salary, annual leave, and expressed sensitivity to our customers. The committee discussed and suggested the board conduct an annual review of Ms. Cavey's performance and recommended approval of the terms and conditions of the proposed contract amendment. Here are the terms: a 3-year contract term with 2 mutually agreed upon 1-year terms, a base salary of $700K, a 3% increase in base salary per annum, no change in current business and vehicle allowance, and an annual leave of 120 hours front-loaded plus an annual accrual rate of 280 hours, which is consistent with the JEA's policies and procedures in consideration of our prior years of employment. I'd ask for your patience. I'd like to expound on some of the points before requesting a motion, discussion, and vote. First, JEA is uniquely structured in that it provides full cycle electric generation, treatment and delivery of water and wastewater services, as well as chilled water services to several large customers in the downtown area. This is unique among all of the utilities within the Large Public Power Council. Customers served. Based on the top 100 American Public Power Association and LPPC, JEA is ranked 10th based solely on our over 500,000 electric customer count. That doesn't include our 400,000 plus water customers and 300,000 plus wastewater customers and the large commercial customers utilizing JEA chilled water services. Now, the Large Public Power Council metrics: 26 of 29 LPPC members responded to a survey. JEA is ranked within the LPPC by 4 metrics. First is the number of full-time employees, second is revenue, third is generation capacity, and fourth is customer count. All that considered, JEA ranks in the 80th percentile within the LPPC operation metrics. The LPPC 2024 Executive Salary Survey CEO ranking. Within this executive salary survey, JEA's current CEO compensation is in the 40th percentile. And then on the CEO salary market analysis, a market analysis of the CEO salary was provided, a practice dating back to 2014. Market data is utilized from Towers, Watson, Energy and General Industry, LPPC, and Comp Data. JEA uses the 1 to 3 billion revenue data cut, and that aligns with JEA's revenues at 1.8 billion. The 50%, the 50th percentile is commonly used for the salary market. The 4 data points are averaged. Incentives and other forms of cash are included in the analysis to provide a comprehensive view of what other CEOs have provided. The CEO charter prohibits the JEA CEO from receiving incentive or bonus payments. The base salary average market data for the 50th percentile is about $807,000. This base salary only and does not, this is the base salary and does not reflect any forms of payment. Again, the compensation committee recommends a $700K base salary, so that's about $107,000 below what the market survey recommends. At this time, I'd like to request a motion regarding the terms of Vicky's contract. Again, 3-year term with 2 mutually agreed upon 1-year terms, a base salary of $700K, 3% increase in base salary per annum, and an annual leave of 120 hours front-loaded, plus an annual accrual rate of 280 hours. Any discussion?
It's a big increase, and it jumps off the page when you do it. But I think it's important that we focus. We're trying to run a business here. When Vicky was hired as an interim, she came in at well below market, and she has done an absolutely marvelous job of turning things around at JEA in so many respects, and streamlining it, making it more efficient. We have got a really, really great leader, and it is incumbent on any business that's got a great leader to pay them fairly. And we're still below her peers, but we certainly have made progress and have rewarded her for doing a great job. It's so tempting to link a pay increase for the CEO with the rate increase and say, well, there we are. If you go through the numbers of what the extra money debt service we have because of Plant Vogtle over what we had 3 or 4 years ago, the rate increases in toto fall way short of that increased expense. And JEA is a better place than it was a year ago. It'll be a better place under Vicky a year from now. And I think it's tough to have a big raise like that, but I think it is so warranted. We'd be wrong and really short-sighted not to treat her fairly.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is, having joined the board here recently, I appreciate some of the public comments. And, I think paying for performance in any business is critically important. And, some of the things that I've learned here more recently is some decisions that Vicky made early on in her tenure saved the company millions, tens of millions of dollars. So when we link that to paying for performance and earning the right to be compensated fairly, I think it's important that there's transparency so that the community understands that we have someone who is making the right trade-offs and should be equitably compensated for the role that she plays in stewarding this asset. So just wanted to share those insights because I think that's important as we look to ensure that whoever's in the seat is equitably compensated for the work that they do.
And
yes, thank you, General. I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk about Vicky's performance over this past year. The attitude and the point of view of the employee at the JEA has increased tremendously, and the satisfaction from all of the comments and everyone who has approached me are really happy with the direction the company is going in now, and leave some frustration. And I really think it's very fortunate for us. And also point out that per our bylaws and our structure, Vicky is not permitted to receive bonuses or any incentive pay, which most people in her position do receive that on top of this. So we were comparing her to base salary solely. And I think that if Vicky was doing this same job in the public sector, obviously her pay would be substantially more. We are a public utility, we are a public service, and you do sacrifice some for that, and I think she is. But I think that this new revised salary, she came in way under market as an interim, and in a time of need, and she was there for us, and she has righted this ship, and we're sailing in the right direction now. And I just want full support of her new contract.
And I just have to add 3 points real quick before going to the vote. One, I think a 3-year contract demonstrates the confidence we, the board, have in Vicky and offers stable leadership for the JEA employees, our community, and financial stakeholders. Second, the board made Vicky permanent because of her exceptional performance, especially with respect to her initiative and innovative approach. We want Vicky to continue to exercise the initiative and innovation without being distracted with a yearly contract renewal process. And lastly, I'd just like to emphasize again, this contract does not impact customer rates in any fashion whatsoever. Pending any other discussion, all those in favor of the terms of the contract, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, next, if I could have MG Orender give us a readout on the Finance, Governance, and Audit Committee.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for all in attendance, Kawanza and General DeSalvo. Also in attendance was John Baker and Rick Morales. And I have to thank the staff for the incredible job they did putting together a great deal of data so that we could make some good decisions. We had an amended and restated interagency agreement. This is an action item. The current interagency agreement with the city expired September 30th, 2023. The fiscal year 2024 contribution to the city was approximately $124 million, based on a 1% increase from the 2023 contribution. And the team did a great job negotiating this, and the city was great to work with. We had a very complicated structure before. Now it's pretty simple, with the exception of 2025, which I'll mention in a minute, will be 1% per year, which allows our finance team to do some better planning as to what our contribution is going to be. This new term extends to September 30th, 2029. The agreement also extends the water quality credits to the city at no cost of approximately 45 metric tons of nitrogen annually through December 31st of 2033. The 2025 contribution that was negotiated with the mayor's administration is about 15 million above 2023. Audited amount of approximately 122 million, or we project 137 million. And then it's 1% a year, with the exception of 2026, where the city made a request, and we will do an increase of 40 million in that year for a one-time contribution. And we're fortunate. Joe's team did a great job renegotiating our debt, and that should be covered by our savings. So I would ask for a motion to approve the proposed amended and restated interagency agreement.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next item for action, we had a great a presentation by Diane Mosier. It's the 457 deferred comp plan. This is for all employees of JEA. The item is administrative in nature and does not result in any increased administrative costs or expenses to JEA. JEA is the plan sponsor, and the JEA deferred comp plan that is provided to all employees. The plan allows a participant who attains age 50 or older in a year to make an additional contribution to the plan that exceeds the statutory limit otherwise applicable to elective deferrals by plan participants. It's called a catch-up contribution, and many of us are dealing with this in our own companies. Existing law was amended effective January 1, 2025 to increase the amount of the permissible catch-up contribution for a participant who attains age 60 to 63 during a year. The super catch-up contribution, the amended law provides that that contribution limit is the greater of $10,000 indexed for cost of living increases starting in 2026, or 150% of the regular catch-up contribution limit. As a reminder, this proposal does not cost anything, has no cost to the JEA. Ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Internal Audit Charter, Lee Montanez, the Director of Internal Audit, made a presentation. Due to significant changes to the Institute of Internal Auditors revisions of its 2024 standards, updates to the charter were necessary to increase clarity, enforceability, relevance, and alignment. Significant changes to the charter were in following areas: responsibilities of the director, internal audits are better defined; addition of specific ethics, professionalism, independence responsibilities to the audit staff for increased accountability. It better defines the committee's role in the oversight of the auditor's independent support and enhanced communication. And finally, minor changes to the charter were made to update the committee name and titles. Request a motion to proceed. All right.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Enterprise risk management policy. This is an action item. Once again, Mr. Montanez did the presentation. In January, Lee reviewed the enterprise risk management roadmap, with the first step being governance and culture. Responsibilities for this step include the board will approve the ERM policy and establish a risk committee. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
A warehouse lease extension. In March of 2023, JEA executed a sublease with AAR Government Services for a 100,000 square foot portion of a warehouse facility near Westlake Industrial Area to address increased JEA inventory needs caused by supply chain disruptions. Some of you will remember there were some issues. There were parts and pieces that we could not get, and they had long weights that cause problems for repairing the city after a storm or a hurricane. The space currently holds 30 million in JEA storm stock and construction project material. Current sublease expires March of 2025, and JEA has negotiated an extension through March of 2028. The negotiated extension also includes an additional 23,000 square feet of warehouse space for JEA's use. JEA's maximum indebtedness for the 3-year term is $3,836,215, which exceeds the $2 million threshold requiring the board's approval. Motion to approve.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any objections? Thank you.
There's a couple just smaller items, housekeeping items. The internal audit update was presented, providing a review of the 2025 internal audit plans for Q1 and their completed audit engagements and open closed audit observations. Additionally, compliance with JEA's disclosure policy and procedures, annual disclosure reports. AJ Soto, manager, debt capital markets, provided the committee with an annual review. Later in the meeting today, members from the external bond council will provide the board members with a disclosure training. Board evaluation, Jody Brooks gave us an overview, and I'm going to give you a 30,000-foot review of our input to staff. There was 24 criteria. The board was asked to rank 1 as strongly disagree, 5 strongly agree. With the majority of the members present, the committee meeting below is a high-level results. Orientation for board members was given 4.6. One board member felt having numerous staff available at member briefings was helpful. Financial reports and annual budget, 4.5. Some board members felt we are now have a better process to report financial status at every board meeting. And being at a number of meetings, there's been a lot of great input. The staff has responded, so it's much clearer and simpler to see. The board feels they have a strong working relationship with the CEO. 5, actively self-educates and stays current with industry trends. 4.1, one of our board members requested staff provide a 1-page industry update in each board package. Board briefing packets are received in advance of the meeting. 4.7, which means we're getting our information. Highlighted a few comments. The board's very collaborative and everyone steps up when needed. No one's shy about asking hard questions. I've been on private and public boards and have never seen a team that was so transparent or willing to assist. We just had a electric, water, and sewer rate review, and again, I'll congratulate Victor Blackshear for doing a great job, and that's the committee report.
Great, thank you, MG. Next, the Capital Projects Committee outbrief, Rick.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The Capital Projects Committee met earlier this morning in this room. We were joined by John Baker and Arthur Adams committee members, and also General DeSalvo and MG Oranger were in attendance. All board members are invited to these meetings. The first item on the agenda was the Arlington East Reclamation Facility, Phase 2. Rob Zamatato gave us a briefing along with Sean Connor, the wastewater engineer. The Arlington East water treatment plant is JEA's second largest facility, treating about 20 million gallons per day. Rob provided the committee with review of the expansion. Phase 2 of the expansion is to restore and upgrade the equipment that has deteriorated capacity from 25 million gallons per day down to about 20 million gallons per day. This project was designed by Hazen and Sawyer. The second solicitation for bids was advertised in November of last year. Only one response was received from Wharton Smith at $99,117,000, which is 2.3% higher than their original bid. This is a fixed price contract and will not increase unless the JEA changes the scope of the work. Most of the project risk is now on the contractor and no longer on the JEA. The reasons for the increase from the January bid were due to subcontractor pricing, material pricing increases, and inflation. The increase is consistent with current market escalation that we have seen across all the other JEA projects. Wharton Smith is consistent with their original bid and did not take advantage of this situation of being a sole bidder on the project. This committee recommends that we award this project to Wharton Smith.
Okay, could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Request of a second motion of the vote to award Wharton Smith the construction of the East Arlington Water Reclamation Facility Phase 2 expansion project. This includes construction of the new effluent structure, aeration basin, primary clarifier, and blowers to the amount of $99,117,000. Need a motion or approve the contract.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Second item that was brought to the committee is the Fulton Cut Replacement Power Line Project. Ricky Erickson, Chief Electrical System Officer, and Joe Alfano, Deputy Chief Financial Officer, presented this project to us. Project need. Jacksport desires to increase the height of the JEA transmission lines to improve the conditions for the size and types of ships transversing Fulton Cut Crossing, thereby expanding navigation in and out of Jacksport facility. There was a conceptual study done in 2001. In March of 2003, the board and the JEA entered into a binding interlocal agreement to proceed with detailed designs and exploration of alternatives to execute the project. Jacksport had secured $45 million in funding. Jacksport and the JEA has since collaborated to establish the project plan. Staff worked to establish the project costs and funding sources for board approval. Mr. Erickson provided a review of the project scope, including the 6 transmission circuits over the St. Johns River at Fulton Cut, which will be carried by 3 lattice towers on each side of the crossing, each with 2 circuits per tower. Mr. Erickson provided a walkthrough of the execution of the project. JEA engaged an experienced transmission design and project advisor, Burns and McDonald, for implementation, review, and design of the construction package at 60%, which supports the GMP determination. Quanta is the contractor responsible for the design and construction management of the project. JEA is providing the material for the project and procuring the structures, monopoles necessary for the hardware. The cost of the cumulative project is $117 million. The committee recommends that the board approves the contract for Quanta structural solutions not to exceed $90 million.
Can I have a motion, please?
So, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The JEA has established a 3-party interlocal agreement between the port, the JEA, and the city. Joe Alfano discussed the funding, timelines, parties, and amounts, which equates to $52 million from the city and the state, $32.5 million from the port and the JEA for this project. The JEA will utilize one-time dollars from the electrical system revenue from the 2024 fiscal budget for this project. We bring this to the board for approval.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
For information purpose only, we were also presented with a update on the combined cycle plant proposal. JEA continues to make progress with the planning and options evaluations to meet the identified needs of new resources to meet the long-term energy needs the JEA customers. During the May committee, staff members provided the results of the Power Island bids. JEA received Power Island equipment bids, which incorporated greenhouse gas regulations. Bids were received on December 4th. Only 2 manufacturers submitted bids. GE and Mitsubishi formally informed the JEA of their intent to bid. Market test and progress of the evaluation team is in progress, and we are expecting the market test bids due April 21st, 2025. JEA began owner's advisory solicitation with onboarding exercise in the implementation phase and other self-bid alternatives. Feasibility study. Mr. Erickson provided review of the greenhouse gas rules and carbon capture geology sequestration. Feasibility study. Staff will continue to provide the committee updates at each meeting. That concludes my report.
Great. Thanks, Rick. And again, just that combined cycle, there's a ton of external variables right now, which really all over the map, and we just got to be really flexible as at the national level regulations sort out with the new administration. Okay, thanks, Rick. Now let's go for rating agency presentation with Joe Orfano and AJ.
Good morning, General DeSalvo and JEA board members. Before I get started with the few slides that we have here for the rating agency presentation, Ted touched on this earlier, but I'd like to repeat, just been a phenomenal effort by my Treasury Debt Squad. That's DEBT. It does sound a little bit like Death Squad, but it is Debt Squad. In the months of January and February, they priced and closed a $462 million water bond offering and also a $42 million bond offering for DES. In addition, the full rating agency presentation draft is in the appendix. It's quite a document. And we have thankfully engaged Nixon Peabody again to assist us with annual disclosure reports for the electric and water and sewer systems. We're going to make those available subsequent to the meeting today. In my past experience, I don't believe I've seen that kind of activity out of such a small group of professionals. I'm proud of them. So getting on to the historical metrics for each system, we have the dark blue electric system and the teal colored water system debt service coverage. We have talked about this as well in the past, but for newer board members, the debt service coverage numbers in each system were elevated for several years. In the early 2020s, we defeased or early retired a considerable amount of debt, which raised those metrics in those particular years for each system. To give you an idea, we talked about this earlier as well. We did show a year-end fixed charge coverage for electric a couple of months ago at 157. We've adjusted that number slightly upward. We were including a little bit too much in that formula. So we are adjusting the rating agency presentation. We ended up at 1.65 times. It gives Ted and me comfort that the forecast, what we're presenting to you, to the leadership team, and to the rating agencies is adequate and accurate. So we see a lot of pressure on that ratio. As we commented through January, we're only at 1.08, but again, through higher revenues in the late spring and summer, we would intend to make up that ground. But it is something that the pricing policy calls for a minimum of 1.5 times. And that is the single A minimum. If we wanted to get to a double A standing on that metric, we would need 2 times coverage. And we don't believe raising revenues for a 2 times fixed charge coverage is the right decision for our customers. On the debt to asset ratio, again, considerable downward movement. We got below 50% in electric for the first time 2 years ago. Again, from a historical perspective, debt peaked in electric at $4.3 billion back in 2009. We're now under 1.4 billion. And that debt to asset ratio at that time was north of 90%. It had a capitalization similar to Lehman Brothers than a municipal utility. It's incredible, the improvement that we've made in both systems. Water peaked in 2011 at about 2.1 billion. The debt to asset ratio in water at that time was about 70%. So they had less ground to improve, but still very high by our peer group metrics. Days of liquidity, and Ted touched on this as well, it's continued to come down. At one time in the mid-teens, we had 150 million in capital funds in each system. That was at a time when we weren't spending a lot of money on capital in each system. It's not feasible now that we have the capital programs that we do in each system.
Hey, just a quick question going back to that last slide. So when I look at the debt to asset on the water side, right, sequentially, 23, 24, it's increasing slightly. But then on the debt service coverage, right, it's the inverse relationship. So how should I think about that?
That's correct. There is an inverse relationship.
Okay.
The higher the debt, the lower the coverage. But it's still, our pricing policy calls for a minimum of 2 times for water. So we're comfortably above that metric.
Okay. All right.
It just looks like it's a considerable decline.
Yeah.
But they were elevated numbers in the early 2020s. We never intended to maintain those types of coverage levels.
Okay. Thank you.
It's a good question. Debt outstanding, I've touched on this. We're at about $1.4 billion in electric. That number will increase considerably over the next several years as Ricky and his team, well, I should say there's a placeholder. It has not come before the board yet, but there is a placeholder for the new combined cycle generating facility that is causing a rise in debt levels for the electric system. Our rates are generally based on depreciation, and our depreciation level in the electric system last year was 228 million. The capital budget's 307 for this year, intended to go significantly higher. So we will see debt balances increase. The debt composition, happy to say we've eliminated a significant amount of risk in the debt portfolio by eliminating the interest rate swaps and reducing the underlying variable rate demand notes that are part of that program, between the revolver borrowing of $50 million, which just occurred last December, I believe, January, thanks AJ, and our variable rate exposure. We're still very low from a historical standpoint in terms of variable rate debt exposure. We like this slide because we commit to certain standards with the rating agencies, and then we actually show our outcomes for fiscal year 24. All of the metrics, with the exception of liquidity, which is slightly below where we forecast, are all spot on. The capital spend is healthy. Again, relative to a depreciation level of 228. That's a metric I think I've talked about in the past that the rating agencies take a good hard look at. Are you spending enough money to cover the depreciation on your assets? So that's something we have been keen on following really over the last four or 5 years. And then we did have some megawatt hour sales growth. Last summer was extremely hot by historic standards, which created that extra revenue that we're able to dedicate for the Fulton Cut transmission line. I'm sorry, sir.
Could you go back one? When it says combined debt service coverage, does that mean water and electricity or?
No, there's still a residual amount of debt at Power Park and Shear. We'll be paying those off in 2028 and 2030. So we consider that the electric enterprise, and we report based on the consolidated enterprise? It's a good question. Unit sales, for the first time, we're showing a little bit of growth, weather normalized 0.8%. It's a little bit hard to see, but we had since I joined, and we've been doing these rating agency presentations, we showed flat megawatt hour sales dating back to 2014. So hopefully we'll move the needle a little bit more. This is the forecast contained in the integrated resource plan. I know it's still modest. It's still not even 1%, but energy efficiency and conservation are continue to drive sales. And hopefully the growth that we're seeing, the customer growth, which we are seeing currently about 2.5%, will translate into a little bit more revenue. We started showing this slide about a year ago as well. This is our revenue requirements. The A's at the bottom there stand for actuals, the B 25 budget, and then 26 through 28 forecast. You see the various components. I'd like to comment on a couple of things. The fuel forecast, for one, we started the year at, our forecast was in the 430 range, 435. We're 60 million higher today because of the fuel costs that we incurred last month and into early February as well. You also see the non-fuel purchase power. We've talked about this too. We wouldn't be raising rates to the degree that we need to raise rates absent the power purchase agreement with MEAG Vogtle. And I said this at the committee meeting. I'll say it again. Ted commented that the annual debt service requirement for that contract is 170, in the neighborhood of 170 million. The Shearer contract that we executed with FPL to replace our share of the Shearer Unit 4 shutdown is 1/10 of that amount. To respond to Board Member Baker's question earlier, all of those, the fixed charges from Vogtle and Shearer go into the denominator. They also get added to the numerator. But the impact is you have to have more revenues to cover those fixed charges. And from the numerator, we also deduct the contribution to the city, which is a big, almost $100 million comes out of the numerator to get to the fixed charge coverage. That's a reason why the fixed charge coverage and the debt service coverage numbers are quite a bit different, particularly for electric. It's not as significant a delta in water, and AJ will address that. Sources and uses, a couple of lines I'd like to talk about. The capital spend obviously is elevated, and in 28, really 27 and 28, you really see the impact of the placeholder for the combined cycle generating facility, which does require funds from debt issuance that you see up above there in the 300, I should say, to almost 450 million in 2028. We are going to adjust this slide slightly for the final presentation because we don't have the revolver borrowings, the revolving credit facility borrowings are in the other line under capital spend. We need to be more transparent about the revolving credit facility draws, and we're estimating borrowings. Currently, we have 50 million outstanding. We think that balance will be between 100 and 125 by year end, but you'll see that number broken out separately. And then where the rubber hits the road, financial metrics, again, coverage remains above our target, 2.5 times in electric. Debt to asset ratio, we're going to need to have a good hard conversation with both the leadership team and the board. Our pricing policy calls for 50% cap on debt to asset. We believe it's going to be a temporary phenomenon caused by the capital spend on the combined cycle, we can consider, we would, again, we set rates on a generational equity basis. We don't want current customers taking the bulk of the cost for a facility that like this, where we're going to go out and issue 30-year debt. So we'll have a conversation at a later date with both the Finance, Governance, and Audit Committee and the board about our thoughts on the pricing policy. And in days of liquidity, again, comfortable, well within our target of 150 to 250 days. So with that, I'll turn it over to AJ to discuss water.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm AJ Soto. I'm the debt manager here. Focusing on the water system, debt outstanding, over time, you'll see our projected debt outstanding going up and our debt to asset ratio moving towards our 50% pricing policy measure. This is reflective of the new money debt issuances we've executed recently and that we plan to continue executing in the coming years. Just for a little perspective, February 7th, 2024, JEA Water issued new money debt for the first time in over 10 years of about $353 million. And then last month, we closed an additional new money issuance of $462 million for water sewer on January 30th. So in the span of less than a year, we issued $815 million of new debt for the water sewer system. A lot of this is driven by growth and regulatory compliance, and so you can continue to anticipate seeing that number, new debt issuance be a common occurrence here over the next several years. Just for perspective, water sewer system debt peaked at $2.064 billion in 2011. Joe likes to quiz me on that periodically. Entity-wide, JEA hit its peak of $6.4 billion in debt in 2010. And the chart to the right reflects the debt composition. It does reflect the recent water sewer debt issuance as of January 30th. We have about $1.7 billion in fixed rate debt and $144 million of variable rate debt. Let's see. Our financial results, what we committed to versus what our actual results were. And Joe is correct in that this is a commitment we make to the rating agencies to share with them what our plan is and then what our actual results were. We marginally missed a few of them, but overall, I'm pleased the results were so close to what we planned. Our liquidity position is improved from 2023. Our days liquidity are actually increased from 109 to about 140 days liquidity in 2024. Capital expenditures remain elevated, but largely in line with the prior fiscal year. Prior fiscal year capital expenditures were $494 million, and in 2024, we hit $491 million. Our debt to asset ratio has increased to 41%, again, reflective of those recent borrowings I just mentioned. However, I do expect that we will stay within our debt to asset ratio target, and we're still below our peer ratio of 45.8%. Unit sales, we are projecting some growth here. I would say the growth rate of 1.8% is about a full percentage point higher than what we're projecting for the electric system, and a lot of that's driven by growth in our water sewer system. Our revenue requirements slide here, we show this slide to the Mayor's Budget Review Committee and to the City Council, and it breaks down the different components of our annual revenue requirements. Two areas I want to point to are the debt service. The new money borrowings in 2024 of $353 million resulted in additional annual interest costs of $18 million. And the FY25 $462 million we just closed on last month is resulting in additional $24 million of interest costs. So just between those two debt deals, that's an additional $42 million worth of interest for our debt service that we expect to incur. This chart, as you see in the forecast years, also factors in the cost of current and forecasted borrowings in the coming years as well. We anticipate borrowing approximately $990 million in that forecast period shown from FY26 through FY28. O&M increases, as Ted pointed out earlier, are largely driven by support costs for new infrastructure that's come online. Similar to what Joe described in the electric version of this slide, capital funding sources and uses, we point to a few places on here. One, the proceeds from debt issuance, which we expect to be about $990 million, and then our capital expenditures. And that tells a really good story, I think. You know, you see capital expenditures of $491 million in FY24, followed by elevated capital expenditures within that forecast period. You know, what you're seeing there in terms of the debt issuance fits with our practice of generational equity. You know, we don't want to disproportionately impact today's ratepayers by having them bear all of the costs for these long life assets. So essentially, we balance out the impact to ratepayers today versus the leverage that we take on. And that's a point you'll hear us make very often. So if you get tired of it, I'm sorry. Our financial metrics, you know, our debt service coverage is starting to reflect something more normal compared to prior years, but it's still within our pricing policy metric. Our debt to asset ratio, we expect it to creep up to our pricing policy metric of 50% because of our capital plan. I'd just like to point out, it's good that we have these metrics in place because they help us balance how we fund our needs going forward with regards to rates versus how much leverage we take on. And we do follow that very closely. As mentioned earlier, our liquidity position has improved and we expect it to remain above our target in the coming years. We continue to invest in our system in an amount greater than its depreciation, as Joe mentioned for electric. And on the water side, you know, in 2023, we had depreciation of approximately $204 million and our CapEx was $494 million. And in 2024, we had depreciation of $182 million and our CapEx was $491 million. So this somewhat addresses the prior concerns we had heard from the rating agency where it's, hey, you're not investing in your system to keep up with your depreciation. The inverse is true now. And I just want to say, you know, overall, our message to the rating agencies is, yes, we plan to borrow more money in the future. However, we believe we've set ourselves up to be in a good position to do that and stay within our target metrics. We are meeting with Moody's and S&P on March 10th and March 12th, or on March 10th, and with Fitch on March 12th. As Joe mentioned, the current draft of the presentation is attached to the agenda package. We will be tweaking it, revising it, and refining it leading up to the rating agency meetings, and we're happy to share the final version of that with the board via electronic communication again. But in the interim, please let us know if you have any questions or comments as you read that presentation. I'll take
This
any.
is probably more of an observation. Again, you know, I'm still kind of taking this all in.
Sure.
The first 90 days, right? So not trying to be critical, right? But I see an opportunity. Is, you know, just internalizing all of this financial data, right? The customers that we serve. This is you know, calculus. The cost to serve, the cost of capital is increasing. The structure that we have in place, from everything I can gather, it's all about passing through a lot of these costs through price increases, right? Which we have to do to stay relevant, to keep the network resilient and vibrant so that we don't have massive disruptions over time.
Sure.
It's a very capital intensive business. There has to be a way to package all of this in a very simpleton version and give to the average consumer so they understand the why. So conversation for another day, but I see this as an opportunity to just educate the communities that we serve on the why. I don't know the best mechanism to do that, but again, I think as we listen to some of the comments that we heard earlier, as we think about some of the communities that we serve, we have to do this, but I think there's an opportunity to explain why we're doing it and what the benefits are to the communities that are benefiting from the investments that we're making.
That's an excellent observation, and you might be comforted to hear prior city managers that I've worked for always stress that we need to be able to condense the information that we deal with day in and day out to be able to explain to taxpayers and ratepayers everything that it is that they hear us illustrate in these meetings. And we are very conscious of that. And we will continue our efforts to try and condense this and make it more reader friendly, because I absolutely agree. As somebody who works in it every day, it's still very hard to condense it to 56 slide PowerPoint presentation for the rating agencies. Figuring out how to condense that further for easier digestion, it's a labor of love and it's an ongoing process, but I do thank you for pointing that out, and we are continuing those efforts.
It's a great observation. We're working with our communications folks to deliver talking points about the need to raise rates. And we started to get that message out, but we can do better. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Arthur. And my take on it is, this is differential equation stuff. I've been familiar with this now for 4 or 5 years, and it's still hard. But am I wrong in characterizing it as this is really a strategic level engagement with the rating agencies, where they're looking at we get feedback on their confidence in our business, bottom line. And for a 2 to 3 to 5 year outlook, it just gets us an idea, or, gives us feedback on what those higher financial institutions are thinking about us, and any red flags incoming, then we know we need to adjust. Is that sort of right?
Yes, sir. It's spot on. And with the prior leadership team and all the activities that went on around that, we never lost sight about our plan to reduce debt, to put both of these balance sheets in a position to take on this debt, because we knew the capital program and the fixed charges associated with Vogel were looming. And those project delays, particularly with Vogel, bought us some time, but now reality set in, unfortunately. But it's a very good observation, General.
Please.
Sorry. One other thing, AJ's comments about the bond issuances and the oversubscription we had in our water and sewer bond issuances shows a lot of confidence in the marketplace. And that's very reassuring for us as board members that, people who are really looking at this and investing in our system are very confident in the product that we're delivering and what we're doing for our customers.
Member Morales, Moody's took light in the upgrade, commenting on a strong board and management team. So absolutely, it's being recognized. We would just hope on the electric side that Moody's and S&P follow Fitch and restore our ratings to AA, because we believe the system warrants AA ratings. And we'll make that case again.
Good. Any others? Okay, thanks. Great presentation on it. Okay, next is disclosure training for board members, and we have the Nixon Peabody team.
General, if I could, I'd like to introduce Liz Colombo, Dan Deaton, and Barry Rothschild from Nixon Peabody. They had represented us as both bond and disclosure counsel for a number of years, in excess of 10 years. They're also joined, Liz and Barry are based in New York. Dan is based in LA, flew here from LA for this meeting. We're also represented on the tax side by Mitch Rappaport in Washington, D.C. Mitch also counsels the LPPC as well. I couldn't be happier to have these folks on our team, and they're already cranking out drafts of the annual disclosure report. So with that, I'll ask them to come up.
Good afternoon, Chair, and is it on? Is that on? Sorry, I think the green light means it's on, right? Good afternoon. As Joe said, I'm Liz Colombo. This is Dan Deaton, Barry Rothschild. We're very pleased to be here this afternoon to talk to you about the disclosure responsibilities for the board. This comes at a very opportune time with the preparation of the annual disclosure filings that you'll be receiving later today. Those annual disclosure reports that are prepared are done for two reasons. One is for ongoing continuing disclosure compliance for your current bond investors, but it also gets incorporated by reference into your official statements as you're doing your ongoing bond offerings. So it's very important to understand the role of these disclosures as you're making statements to the investors in JEA's bonds in the marketplace. And we'll try to be as brief as we can. This can get into the weeds, but we'll try to keep it topical and on point as we do our presentation.
Yeah, and we're trying to just take about 15 minutes. Just big picture, JEA is a very large issuer of bonds, as we've talked, as has already been discussed in this meeting, billions of dollars outstanding held by investors throughout the country. And the presentations and the materials that are submitted to boards, governing bodies are all across for issuers, is important for board members to understand what is it that is being asked of the boards in terms of their relationship to the disclosures. It's been a point of our firm to focus on this question quite a bit because the issue really for our perspective is this: our purpose here is not to explain what the securities laws are or what the different issues are that the JEA has to deal with on a day in and day out basis. The sole purpose that we're trying to communicate here is what, as a director, is it that you are supposed to be doing with the very large documents that are going to be coming to you on a regular basis. And the annual reports themselves are fairly significant documents, and trying to distill as easily as we can down, what do you do as a director in that sense? To get to the bottom line, let us start with the bottom line of what is it that you're being asked to do as a director in connection with JEA's disclosures is really comes down to two very basic points. One is process and one is substance. Okay. JEA has disclosure policies and procedures, which we'll discuss later on. And just being aware of what those procedures are, given your awareness of the organization and considering the various people that need to be involved and the various processes that need to be involved, just recognize at the end of the day, those disclosure policies and procedures represents the board's delegation to staff to take responsibilities over those disclosures. And is this a good process? Is this not a good process? Kind of a deal. Make more sense as it goes along. We're starting out with the bottom lines. So one is a process point. And the second is to understand that the board itself is a part of the disclosure policies and procedures. The board has its own knowledge, its own sensitivities, and its own perspectives on JEA, and making sure that the board of directors is involved with that at an appropriate level. That's a lot of what we're going to discuss today and as we go through. This is the same slide at the end to give you a sense as to what it is that the directors are supposed to be doing. Okay, so let us start by basically saying, who's the SEC and why are they so concerned about state and local government? And when we all started in the industry, the SEC didn't care about our market. They didn't pay attention. They'd kind of shoot and fall back for a while because from their perspective, problems when they came to disclosures were lying, cheating, and stealing. And that frankly didn't happen very often in our market. And so if it wasn't lying, cheating, and stealing, they didn't care about what was going on. And they ran into the wall really heavily, almost exactly 20 years ago, where they realized, that's right. There's not a lot of lying, cheating, and stealing going on in the municipal securities market, but the municipal securities market has its own unique DNA that creates a number of different problems. And the three major problems that they've focused on is the silo effect, right? Anybody with government knows this, that government can get balkanized into bureaucratic silos, and you can have right hand not knowing what left hand is doing. A lot of situations where just through well-meaning municipal officials, but the inability for two silos to communicate, the investors got half the story, and the stuff they really needed to know was in a different silo that had never been a part of that process. The SEC was surprised at the damaging impact that could cause. The second is lack of a systematic process that many issuers never, back 20 years ago, really thought about process and what is the right way to put together a disclosure. What are the various people that need to be talked about? What do they need to look like in that sense? And then third, inappropriate impact of political influence, right? State and local government is by its nature political animals. And that by whether in direct and indirect ways changed the way disclosure ultimately got to investors and burned a lot of investors. And the SEC became very aware and realizing of that. So those are the three major problems the SEC is out to solve. And you'll see those three problems recur as we go through things.
Right. And as Dan had said, for a long time, our market had been kind of ignored by the SEC, again, thinking that because, we weren't profit necessarily driven, that, again, we weren't looking to do the same type of potentially misleading or fraudulent disclosures that they were seeing in the corporate markets. But they did start to release reports in the 90s. And then again, there was a big report in 2012 focusing on what they viewed as discrepancies and various areas where things in our markets weren't necessarily being addressed in a way that was providing full, fair, accurate disclosure about what we'll refer to later as the credit story. What is the source of repayment for bond investors who are making investment in government securities?
So by now, over the last 20 years, there's dozens of examples where things have gone quite wrong. And so we wanted to pick just one of those examples to give some sort of concrete facts. And one of those that's well known is the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which issued a series of bonds from 2012 to 2014 to fund what it referred to as roadway projects. Within the General Counsel's office of the Port Authority, the attorneys knew, and in fact, they corresponded with each other saying, hey, is this legal? Would these bonds be valid? But they moved forward with issuing the bonds despite those concerns, never really in the SEC's mind being run to ground. But the SEC makes a significant amount of focus on a specific meeting between the General Counsel's office and then Governor Chris Christie, which in its view placed political pressure on the General Counsel's office to get it done, and believed that political pressure swept these really significant facts under the rug about what really mattered from a bondholder's perspective. And so the SEC came in pretty hard on the Port Authority, a significant fine of $400,000 in admitting wrongdoing. But perhaps most of all, they made the Port Authority redo the entire process by which it did debt, and it was a very traumatic process and proceeding for the Port Authority. But it really just demonstrates the ways in which things can get lulled into a quiet, just moving forward, we're getting it done, and all of a sudden one finds out that the SEC, that the disclosure really left out something that was fairly significant.
Right, and the slide shows the importance here, again, was the discussions around whether or not they had the legal authority to issue these bonds is important to an investor, because if you don't have the legal authority to issue the bonds and there's an evidence or a challenge with respect to the authorization, it could result in that debt being invalidated and the bondholders would not receive their money back, which creates, again, problems for everyone involved, right? Your investors who no longer trust what you're doing, and also creates problems with respect to the authority of the board who's going forward and moving with these type of authorizations and making sure that, knowing what's going on. If they had put a risk factor into the POS, could that have changed the result? Perhaps.
Right, but when you tell investors that we might possibly not have to pay you back, they also charge more in interest, as you can imagine. So it's
There's
one of those
incentive.
things.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So, what does that mean that issuers are supposed to be doing? Again, this is talking about issuers broadly, not the board of directors, but in talking about issues more broadly. And again, the thing that comes back over and over again from the SEC is process substance, right? One element is process, one element is substance. And when it comes to process, they have hammered down policies and procedures that write down in advance of offering 4 things. Right? Connect your silos. Don't let right hand not know what's going on with left hand. Make sure that the various places where key facts and information reside are appropriately involved in the process, and making sure that there's a proactive process of saying where are all of the key places and the people that need to be involved, and make sure that there's an intentional process that involves them. Developing a working group. This is by far the most significant change that has happened to procedures over the last 20 years is just the right group of people getting into a room and saying, do we all agree this is the story that we're telling for this offering in that sense? Documentation, being able to establish what process you even followed as an issuer, and then training, which is, trainings are sort of like this situation, not so much explaining something that people don't know or don't understand, but coming back together to say, hey, this is what we're all committing ourselves to do, and this is why we're doing it on a routine basis. So that's at a high level. Hey, think about a proactive, systematic process to ensure that all of the facts and information that investors need to know are going to be will be in the official statement. The second thing is tell the credit story. And this is a substance point, right? So as I like to say that the key to disclosure is a little picture thing and a big picture thing, right? And this is the big picture thing, which is in essence saying, what matters from an investor's perspective. Stepping back, how are these bonds going to be repaid? Where's the money going to come from? What's the risk to the revenues? What's the risk to the expenses? How could this investment in a bond go wrong? And stepping back, does this disclosure tell that story? Oftentimes, and I would say one of the more interesting aspects of the last 20 years is how often this comes down to people not telling elephants in the room. And obviously in situations where people are trying to deceive investors, how that happens is not that big of a surprise. What has been interesting is in situations where people honestly thought they had told the story and left the elephant in the room out of the disclosure. And people, when you tell them that, they find that to lack plausibility. Like, that doesn't make any sense. How could anybody do that? But anybody that's worked within the confines of state and local government knows how that happens. It's a confusing place. Things get turned upside down. Sensitivities get realigned. It's not as clear as people think that it is. And that really goes to show you that the simplicity of stepping back and saying, what story are we telling, oftentimes can break down so many different disclosure problems and issues that arise.
I think, just to stay on that, Dan, if you look at it means telling the bad news along with the good news. So a lot of times you look at these documents and you look at it as a marketing piece, like a brochure. And while it is a sales document, it's not a marketing piece. It's really telling a story, because you have to look at it from an investor point of view. They need to understand the story, and they have to make a reasonable decision whether to buy the bonds based on that story. So it's important to tell bad news as well as good news.
So before we talk about what it is for the board to do, let's talk about what JEA staff has done and what it continues to do. Based off of this SEC guidance, JEA staff has maintained and complied with disclosure policies and procedures, has had them in place since 2015, and most recently updated them in 2022, and follows those disclosure policies and procedures as it does its annual filings, which you'll receive today, as well as its actual bond offering disclosures, which happen when JEA issues debt. The policies and procedures do what it is that the SEC expects, right? Which is a disclosure management group, a group of people with the right sensitivities, sitting around, asking the right questions, reviewing the materials, and making sure that it can take ownership of the disclosure for JEA. It sets forth specific procedures how JEA will prepare annual reports and official statements. In other words, it has done the exercise of taking inventory of where facts and information reside within the organization and making sure that that's being taken into consideration. And then it requires periodic training of JEA staff and the board of directors, which is why you guys are suffering through this today. So, in addition, the JEA staff is focused on, and I think as the presentations earlier, what's the credit story? While appropriate effort is made to ensure the accuracy and completeness of the disclosure, the staff also considers the big picture of what story are we telling about. There's meetings that go on with the disclosure management group. The JEA conducts multiple drafting sessions with outside counsel, advisors, and underwriters to gather input, and provides draft disclosures to and conducts due diligence sessions with senior management when appropriate to make sure senior management's knowledge and perspective are taken into consideration with the preparation of the disclosure. In other words, it travels through the organization in the appropriate ways and outside the organization to make sure that it's capturing that big picture narrative that needs to be captured in the disclosure.
And it's quite a process, as AJ will probably tell you, because he'll be going through and he'll be updating information for specific factual information, but also kind of looking overall to make sure that as you read the specific information and as we're asking questions about what needs to be updated, there's also a continued back and forth dialogue with what we refer to as the subject matter experts within JEA's organization who can specifically answer a question with respect to what's going on with vote, what's going on with a litigation matter, what's going on with potential development or entering into PPAs. And so as we're thinking about the credit story and as we're looking forward, as well as presenting the historical information, we are working in connection with the disclosure management group and the subject matter experts to make sure that that information is being reviewed, checked, and double checked for accuracy.
So now on to the purpose of today, which is what am I as a director supposed to do with JEA's disclosure? So you'll get the draft annual disclosure report, which are very long. Am I supposed to read it? Am I supposed to ignore it? What am I supposed to do with this document when I receive this document? I think that we want to take a couple slides and just set up the background a little bit to this to make sure that it's really clear why it is that we're going to zero in on exactly what it is that a director is supposed to do with those disclosure documents. So the first thing to keep in mind is that the federal anti-fraud laws, which are the laws that actually govern the accuracy and completeness of disclosures, are what is referred to as a statements-based liability regime. What it means is that someone only becomes liable when they make a statement in connection with the offer or purchase of securities. While JEA is ultimately the entity that is the maker of those statements, right? Individuals within JEA are also involved in making those statements, right? When the SEC talks about holding specific individuals responsible for statements and disclosures, right? It drawing on several key Supreme Court decisions say that, look, we look at the scope of the individual's participation in making the disclosures that are questioned. Okay, so those individuals that are most directly involved in participating in the formation of those statements are the ones that the SEC is most focused on, okay? But it's key to understand that they are not the ones that the SEC is exclusively focused on. And the next slide will make that point. So the board of directors themselves, while not integrated in the disclosure process, also participate in the making of these statements in that technical sense, but within a very specific narrow scope. It is not the same scope as the people that are actually involved in the trenches of the preparation of the disclosure. This was really fleshed out by the SEC really clearly about 30 years ago in connection with the bankruptcy of Orange County, California. And the SEC went to actually the extent of creating what's called a 21A report. There's only 2 of them that have ever been in the municipal securities market. And by last count, the SEC in its 100-year history had only done about 20 of them. So they're very, very rare for the SEC to do these. And they actually took time to actually write out its theory of why it believed the Board of Supervisors were liable under the federal anti-fraud laws, even though all they did was approve the bonds, right? So you go back. How can a Board of Supervisors be liable when all they did was approve a bond when they weren't actually involved in preparing the actual information that was there? Well, that's the point of this report by the SEC. And what the SEC focused on is not what the supervisors in the first instance didn't do, focused on what they did do. They had approved the issuance of bonds and the use of disclosure documents in question. And while that may seem like a very small act to focus on, the SEC focused on the significance of what it is that they did. Right? They had to issue the bonds, right? They were a gatekeeper that were within the organization. And furthermore, the supervisors knew information that had called into question the solvency of the county. And even though that's all they ever did was to approve the bonds, with what they did know about the county, it called into question how anybody could have possibly bought the bonds when they knew that the county was very highly likely to head to bankruptcy. They were actually approving numerous issuance of bonds as they had, according to the SEC, facts the SEC was going to be filing for bankruptcy and never raised the question of what in the world is going on here. So the point is the SEC did not expect the supervisors to be actively involved in the preparation of the disclosure. And that falls to everything. The SEC never complains they didn't read the official statement. They never said you were supposed to read the disclosure document. They never said that you were supposed to be going over this very section, rewriting them or providing nits or providing any of those things. What the SEC said is, look at what steps you take in connection with this and make sure that your participation is reasonable in light of the steps that you are in fact taking, okay? And so that is why when we talk about what it is that governing body members are supposed to do, we really focus on what is it that the board of directors are doing with respect to the debt issuances, and make sure that we are tailoring a sense of what it is that the directors are supposed to be doing in light of that role. Okay, and so while the board of directors is not going to be actively involved in the day-to-day disclosures, you nevertheless do participate in the disclosure, whether you realize it or not, in 2 ways. One, you're going to approve the bond offerings, right? And then you also just have bond offerings and the disclosures, like the annual report that we filed. In addition to that, you have supervisorial responsibilities over the staff that in fact does prepare the disclosures, okay? And then also, in a sense, and this is one of the areas that's been most surprising to me over the last 20 years, is that the board of directors is its own silo. JEA needs to know your information. And I think that a lot of that comes down to the big picture of understanding the board is naturally going to be inclined towards looking at that big picture credit story. Are they aware of this? Aware of this? But I think also what's really been surprising is the number of situations where there has been a major fact, and I mean a major fact, that has it happened, and only the governing body knows of it. The staff never knew about it. And so it was literally only the governing body review of the disclosure could have elicited that the information was missing from the disclosure document, and the fact was a game-changing fact. So it has demonstrated that the key involving the board of directors is one to understand that by approving bonds, by reviewing, by having this information and so on, by just the organic nature of your job as a director, you do have a measure of participation in the making of the statements. Doesn't mean you have to read the document, doesn't mean you have to draft the document, but stepping back and saying, you know, here's a fairly major issue that's out there. Are people aware of this, and is that reflected in the disclosure? Has become a cornerstone of what needs to be done by governing body members. And so, for that reason, what we have encouraged governing body members to do is two things. Okay, one is make a reasonable delegation. Realize that when you look at the disclosure policies and procedures, that is a proactive effort by the staff to evaluate the places, to evaluate the spaces and the individuals and the departments where key information about the disclosure is located, and evaluating that. And evaluating the reasonableness of those procedures with what you know and what you understand about the organization. And then second, you yourselves are a part of JEA's disclosure policies and procedures. You have unique knowledge and perspective of significant facts and develops in JEA that need to be at times included in the disclosure. We like, this is actually Director of SEC statement, actually quote, which is doing what the then Director of the Enforcement said, do an elephant in the room analysis to say, look, here are the elephant in the room. Are these things in the disclosure is one of those that's really key. So in our collective experience, it's not routine at all for the board to have to come up with something that needs to go in the disclosure. It's not routine, okay? And I would think that as a matter of routine and course, you would, if you did these two things, you would be unlikely as a routine matter to have something that comes up every single time bond offerings are done. You might, but in our experience, it's not common, okay? But it is also in our experience surprising how many times that they will. It is something that there have been key things that have come up over time where the governing body becomes sort of the ultimate stop on that and ends up having information, perspectives, questions that ultimately change the trajectory of that disclosure. You know, board of directors should feel free to discuss with JEA staff key developments at JEA, especially ones JEA staff is unaware of, so that everything that everyone knows can be appropriately involved in disclosure. So that is our presentation. Hopefully that was clear. But at this time, anybody have any questions or follow up, anything they would like to do?
So the first time I did this, and again, it was, this has been a great presentation, by the way. You struggle with, okay, you're not the smartest person in the room on this stuff. You want to do due diligence. And my philosophy sort of is, I'll just look to see, one, if there's anything I disagree with, I have questions, and this staff is great at answering, and I'm the king of the dumb question stuff. But number two, then, I looked just to see, is there something that runs counter to what we've heard before? And there may be not an integrity thing, but just a misleading statement, non-intentional, but just look to see those type disconnects. Yeah. Again, it never happens so far, but that's sort of my approach. Is that about right, would you say?
That's exactly it. And we do this enough places, enough whatever. That's the simplicity of what you just described triggers concerns more often than people realize. And so as simple as that is, that simple thing could save, you know, in various places has saved people from major problems.
When you say triggers concerns, you mean that level of review identifies issues that should be raised and or addressed.
Yeah.
If you find something that you feel is something that should be raised and you raise it, very often that may be something that, yes, you caught that should have been addressed. Yeah.
Yeah. Orange County is a great example. So anybody thought about the fact we're going bankrupt? And it really just goes to show you, as I like to describe it, as the expertitis, that terrible disease where you think the experts know everything they're talking about, right? And oftentimes it's simple, like, things become echo chambers and people miss things. We've seen things where staff at other places, not here, but other places, miss like really major things. They get caught as they go up the chain.
New Jersey, for example.
Yeah. And it's just like, hey, has anybody thought of, so the simplicity of that? So, and within the role of a director, given what it is that you do, that's all that you can be expected to do. But that simple step in some situations actually wasn't taken.
So I guess somewhat of a standard was you knew or should have known.
Yeah, well, and usually what it is that they knew. There was no question that they should have known, but they didn't think it was their job to ask the question about the disclosure. It says it's that simple. I think that the SEC would take it that if you should have known, they'd probably leave it alone, as long as just if you know about something, say something, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. Any other comments at all? Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much. Very good review. And it's always a good reminder of making sure we're doing the right thing. So I appreciate all three of you coming here for this. Very valuable. Thank you. Okay. Is there any other old or new business to discuss? Okay. I don't have a chair's report, but I do have comments before adjourning. First one, again, Vicki, thank you for the outstanding job you've done to date. It's almost been a year, and what a year it's been. But again, safe to say, speaking on behalf of the board, we're absolutely delighted that you're agreeing to stay on another 3 years and just continue doing what you're doing. You're doing all the right things. You got our full confidence. Second thing, this month, February, we've had 4 committee meetings and 1 board meeting. And just a couple thank yous to the committee chairs. Thank you for your indulgence on this. This has been a lot of work. And kudos to the JEA staff. This is not easy. Coordinating, getting all the documentation, all the read-ahead material and all that kind of stuff. Usually it's like once a month, but you all have stepped up and done it 5 times this month alone. So just a huge shout out to Vicki, your staff, and everybody associated with setting us, the board of directors, up for success and preparing us for these meetings. So thank you for all your hard work. With that, our next board meeting will be March 25th, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.